All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining today's webinar, Cracking the Code on New Product Forecasting. One interesting statistic that we'll start with is that about 90% of new product innovations fail. And what's interesting about this is that's the same rate of failure as your rinky-dink startup. So how is it that organizations with the resources, the experience, the brands, the distribution are barely beating out the small startups? So today we're going to explore that a little bit. We're going to talk about how decision intelligence, human and AI collaboration, and specifically new product forecasting actually helps increase the launch success. During the presentation, feel free to post any questions you have in the chat. I'm going to moderate and I'll pause the conversation when it's appropriate so we can answer any questions. And additionally, we'll save about 5 to 10 minutes at the end for a more open forum and conversation. Just a quick note, we've got a broad mix of attendees today, both technical and non-technical. So we're not going to get into too much of the details around the modeling or the very tactical elements of it. But if you have additional questions, please reach out to us. We're happy to get into more detail around it, provide those demos, etc. So if you would like a demo of the capability, please email us directly. We'll share those emails with you, especially on the last page, and we're happy to discuss further. So just to start off, a little bit more about Cloverpop, as we get into the overall discussion. So Cloverpop is a leading decision intelligence company. And so we deliver our decision intelligence platform, our AI forecasting and optimization capabilities, as well as a suite of decision agents, agentic capabilities. And we operate in the intersection of consumer goods, pharmaceuticals, retail industries, as well as really focusing on the topic of growth decisions. So to that end, our forecasting team has deployed around 500,000 forecasts around 100 plus categories in most countries and regions. Everything from long-term forecasting to new product forecasting and innovation, influencing about 50,000 different growth strategies and decisions being made. And you can learn more about us on Gartner Peer Insights. Luckily we've been the Inc. 5000's fastest growing private company in the US. Okay. So just a little bit of an introduction on the team here. My name is Lanny Royberg, one of the co-founders of Cloverpop. I will be moderating the discussion. With me today, we have our forecasting leads, Lana, Klein, and Raul Girardo. So Lana, why don't you introduce yourself to the group here?
Hi, everybody. I'm Lana Klein. I'm a practice lead for decision analytics, and my background is for over 2 decades. I've been working with leading global CPG and pharma companies to help them unlock smarter growth by combining strategy, innovation, and AI-powered solutions.
Hello, and I'm Raul Girardo, based out of Mexico City. I'm part of Cloverpop's team for the past 10 years, and also I have the very lucky experience of being part of the analytics world here, working in forecasting and analytics, and also leading marketing and forecasting functions across different CPGs. So very nice to be with all of you this morning.
Thank you, everybody, for joining, and let's go. So when we look at CPG industry today, innovation is clearly taking a center stage. Traditionally, when we thought about the growth levers, it was really a combination of M&A, base business growth, and innovation. But today, M&A and base business are really not good growth levers. M&A activity has declined and really at the lowest level in a decade. We have high interest rates, and base business volumes have been stagnant pretty much across majority of the categories. So that leaves us with innovation really as a key lever to grow. And 84% of execs agree that innovation is really central to growth. Last year, CPG companies spent collectively about $180 billion on innovation globally. Unfortunately, much of this innovation fails. As Lanny pointed out, about 90%, sometimes higher, depending on who you ask, of innovation either fails or just doesn't reach full potential, meaning doesn't reach projections or hopes. And that translates into about $160 billion spent on failed R&D innovation initiatives. So when we ask executives what are the key reasons they think for the new product failure, the number one thing cited is no alignment with changing consumer needs. Number two is execution. And number three is incorrect product attributes, which is just basically failed understanding of concepts. So here are some, Raul can take us through some of the really famous examples of that. And examples abound, but we'll just pick on something that happened long ago, so nobody is offended.
Yeah. And one of the reasons why we wanted to start with some of these anecdotes and some of these examples is because usually when we think about innovation, when we think about how forecasting can enable, it's not a straightforward way of dealing with some of these challenges, but we can take some of the learnings that some of the big players have done, right? So a few years ago, we had one of the largest consumer companies ever trying to launch a new product. So what they said is, okay, let's run a lot of studies, let's run a lot of tests, let's try to see what the people are saying, and let's try to back our launch with data. So in this case, they ran over 200,000 consumer taste tests. The results were overwhelmingly positive. Everyone was clear that this was going to be a winner product. But what was the issue? Data sometimes overlooks things that we don't fully capture by just looking at numbers, but just looking at one single approach to understand what's driving this desire to consume. What was the result, and what the thing that that in this case this company couldn't capture? There was a high loyalty for and a deep emotional attachment for the original flavor. So this is an example that everyone might relate with. This is how Coca-Cola tried to reset their formula, tried to relaunch their product. Everything seemed to be pointing in the right direction. But at the end, there are things that are going to be more important than just getting to the numbers, getting to the data. So in innovation, we're going to walk you through some of the things that we've learned over time, how technology is helping overcome some of these challenges. And we wanted to start with this example so we really can see that usually challenges are not as easy as they might seem, right?
Yeah, and even recently, this example of Cracker Barrel redesigning the logo, they spend probably a lot of money, a lot of time, and a lot of consumer testing to redesign the logo and make it more contemporary. As a result of this backlash, they basically went back to the old logo, I think about a week after they launched the new one. So yeah, it's not just, this story repeats over and over again. So why does innovation fail? First is really a lack of forward view. Here are some old examples. BlackBerry was really convinced that iPhone is never going to take over because just not convenient to type, on the screen. PepsiCo, launched, Pepsi Clear. Nobody really asked for this, but they thought it's a good idea. And actually, for a while, within carbonated drinks, companies refused to acknowledge, they kept pushing data, refusing to acknowledge the consumer tastes are shifting to more natural, to more functional drinks. And that really, for a while, delayed their growth and performance. The second thing is off-target design concept. I don't know if you guys have seen this example, but this Colgate lasagna, some of it is myth, but Colgate for real tasted frozen meals and was going to launch frozen meals. So, just being completely unaligned between, disalignment between brands and where they're playing. And again, there are multiple, this is the most egregious example, but I think all of you can think about some concept that was really off target. The next is a less kind of like sexy thing, but it's really launch execution, and people really underestimate how important the execution is. And that's what we found actually as we were building new product forecast models, and Raul will talk about this a little bit later. Strong execution is really at least as critical as the concept. And a couple of recent examples, we looked at like Blue Diamond, for example, launched a great product. It was, everybody knows Blue Diamond nuts, and it was nuts and dark chocolate. What's not to like? Like, what's wrong with this concept, right? And yet the product didn't do amazingly well because they didn't put it in the right aisle, because they didn't get enough execution. They didn't launch on time. So it was just really the largely distribution execution issue that didn't really bode well for the product. And then finally, lack of incrementality. Again, lots of, product extensions are super common and very often justified. Here, sometimes companies go overboard. A great example, if you look at Smirnoff vodka and just look at, the array of flavors they have, with if something hits, like there was a hit with, I think, Smirnoff peach. There were 5 other peach flavors that followed. And of course, these are not incremental. They just take shelf from existing products. So these are all big reasons. And it's not just why the innovation fails. So why cannot companies predict well what will work and what will not work? And it really comes down largely to 3 things. One is, how do you properly assess all the intangibles, right? Like, the appeal of concept, appeal of product, the fit with market needs. You can run consumer surveys, but not always. And really, just the survey is not going to tell you everything. Second, that is very important, is actually overconfidence and optimism bias. Because so much innovation fails, companies hope that this time is going to be different. Yes, I will get this distribution this time. Yes, I will support this product. And at the same time, it's more likely than not that it will be an average execution or something that, you actually could have anticipated. And then finally, innovation pipeline is pretty long. So when companies estimate concepts, or new product launches, there's a lot of ambiguity. You can, you don't know if you're going to get the distribution. You don't know if you will be able to get enough allocation on marketing. So all of that is really contributing to new product forecasting rates that are actually abysmal. So we estimate that it's about 40-50%. But, it's just pretty much just flipping the coin, right? But very often it's actually a lot lower. So thinking about traditionally how this has been done, your gold standard today, if you will, is market research and concept testing. And that does have merit, of course, because you are getting a real consumer feedback on a specific concept, and it actually produces decent, accuracy. It's about 20-25% error on average. But it comes with a lot of shortcomings because these are costly one-time survey. You do this survey, then you change anything in a concept, or you change anything in this very kind of like preliminary execution assumptions you made, your forecast is going to be off. And then finally, consumers don't necessarily always do what they say they're going to do. So that's like in a classic Coke example, right? So cannot account for everything. But that's like the best companies can do. In most cases, it's actually much simpler and much more kind of cursory. It's either like doing something like I'll take penetration, assumption, trial, and repeat rate, put it together. Or I will look at, what did we do in our previous product launches and maybe average it out. In both cases, it's a lot of assumptions that do not take into account specific concepts. They still have very, very high error rate. That's actually like, where your 50+% error is largely coming from. And the majority of product launches are actually done through these approaches. So how do you do it better? How do you do it better, right? So here's the new approach, much better approach. How can we de-risk innovation, combining expertise that a human can bring and knowledge of the marketplace with enabling it with power of AI? So it really combines 3 components. One is AI-enabled forecasting. So that's where we can bring more consistency and adaptability across the entire innovation process, but specifically in the forecasting. And we're basing it, we create models that allow us to really understand what is this, what is the chances for success based on, on all the execution factors. And we can make this in real time, adjust it for, for different scenarios and for different execution. Enabling this, why wasn't it possible before, because data for this type of models was not available before. And today we deploy agentic AI to continuously enrich the data and continuously bring in market signal, attribute signal, consumer signal that is being assembled and continuously fed into this model. And then finally, human plus AI is really tapping into human expertise, providing the models with human oversight, providing or informing the models rather with what they don't know, how the category operates, and then enabling AI to provide sort of the statistical background and calculate what humans cannot. So how does it work in reality? What does all of this really mean? What do you need? So the key components, you need to start with building a strong data foundation. And there are multiple data sources that go into this. We'll talk a little bit more about this, but it's really collecting existing data and enriching this data, basically creating new data sets with AI where they didn't exist. And these data sets are usually around attributes and execution benchmarks. And that, again, you have collaboration of human and AI where humans can provide category input and help us to structure, for example, what attributes, what matters for the category. And then AI can help us to collect and structure data or develop historic benchmarks. We use this data foundation to develop predictive models, and it's really twofold. It's a forecast models and incrementality models. So this is very much AI-driven part. The important thing about this, that these are not models of one specific innovation. These are a category model that allows you to model number of different innovation initiatives that you have and test the number of innovation initiatives very, very quickly once you develop this model. Then finally, once you have these models, it's really developing, you have your new concepts and it really rough sizing your year one forecast in incrementality. So you kind of have an idea which, what concept has good chances for success. And then the last part is once it's a little bit closer to launch, you can actually use very similar models, but at a more granular level to optimize your execution using more realistic guardrails that are developed by AI in terms of, what distribution you might be able to get, what are realistic, and what lift you're going to get, what are the realistic assumptions on your trade and your marketing spend, and how much this will impact. So using this approach, we're able to drive our forecasting error to about 15-20%. We're able to give you a dynamic scenario modeling. So it's not, again, it's a reusable, scalable solution that allows you to make changes in real time and see how those changes will impact the outcome. So let's talk a little bit what's new. And the big thing is the new news that enables it is really how do you build your data foundation? So to create this model, you need a number of data sources. One is something that companies always use and is readily available, which is syndicated sales data and has examples of historical new product launches, how they were executed, and so forth, right? But this data is lacking much of, like product components. So, and obviously, success of the product depends on product attributes. So the new thing is enabling us to build a structured data set of product attributes, claims, product benefits for both in market and recently launched products, and combine this data set of augments your sales data with product attribute data. So we do this by deploying agentic AI and generative AI to collect this data, really across company websites, consumer surveys, or consumer reviews on Amazon and so forth. Another important piece is feeding category-specific consumer signals. So what product attributes are trending? What consumers are talking about? Is there increasing interest in a particular product attributes? Let's say we're talking about proteins, if it's food, or we're talking about, I don't know, retinol or alpha, or niacinamides or some new hot trending ingredients in skincare. So that allows us to see measure continuously level of consumer interest in a particular type of product or attribute. And then finally, we have new product concept description. So that's really what this company creating. They already have, I'm sure, lots of concept ready. So this is really an input into measuring specific concept. And then the last piece that is very important is new product launch execution. So you could go into the model and type in your execution, but again, there is a huge propensity to overestimate, how you're going to execute, overestimate your distribution, overestimate your spend, overestimate your marketing support. So what we create is really historic guardrails of what are the execution averages and what are execution quartiles. So if you're saying that I will get, to 80, 90% ACV, well, let's look in history. Were you able to get to this historically on the examples? So that creates the guardrails that actually are rooted in history and legitimately rooted in history.
And Lana, just to chime in here, one of the questions we got is, are we able to bring in historical learnings from previous innovations, from previous launches into the model so it continues to learn?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's exactly this last component. These are historical learnings. If you think about it, when we're saying history doesn't repeat itself, it's true. But this is more true in terms of how consumers are going to react to execution, for example. So, if you're getting certain distribution, history does repeat itself, right? Like your distribution is going to provide a fairly predictable lift. Where history doesn't repeat itself is evolving consumer taste, which is why it is important to get a market signal and a read on the new consumer trends. Yet it's important to get history on how the execution impacted the success. So when we talk about, when we talk about getting this new data, so specifically, what are we getting, right? We're collecting and augmenting our historic data with the product intangibles. And these are your claims, consumer concerns, ingredients, key ingredients that are included in the product, and price tiers. And we're doing this in a way that is really, if you think about this data, this is largely very unstructured data scattered around internet. Sure, Nielsen provides some of this in different columns, in different ways of words and everything, but majority of that is really super messy. So what we're doing, we basically create we use generative AI to create agentic models to collect this data, structure it, and augment your sales and execution data with the attributes, claims, ingredients, and concerns. And this is going to vary by category. This is just example that we have for skincare, but for all other categories, this is going to be quite different. And that's where the human input is actually important. For example, working with a category lead or working with a R&D, understanding what are the key things in your category, what should we take into account. So that's really a very custom thing. But once we develop this data set basically allows you to model numerous product launches. Then when it comes to modeling, there are really two predictive or two core models, if you will, reflecting two very important things we want to know about new product introduction. One is new product forecast. So what is the sales and volume that you're planning that you might be able to get from this, right? And that's really your product attributes, type of innovation, launch execution, and consumer and macro trends. These are the key factors. Behind each of this, there are lots of data. We talked about attributes. Type of innovation is clearly important, and we need to differentiate as well. Launch execution, again, these are really, your distribution, your marketing spend, your trade, your time, all that. And then consumer and macro trends is really reflecting both your consumer interest that is category specific, but also something that is probably related to economy, consumer sentiment, and so forth. So these are the factors that go into the new product forecast model. A second model is incrementality, because you can have high sales, but if these high sales really cannibalize your existing products, this is not amazing either, right? So this is a separate model that supplements forecast and is based on estimating incremental distribution that product is going to get or incremental marketing spend, as well as, is it getting incremental velocity compared to the products in market? If it replaces something, is the velocity going to be better? And then finally, looking at sources of volume, where it is going to source the volume. Is it, going to source the volume from your products, or is going to source the volume from the market? So these are the key components. We're not going to go into a lot of technicalities today, but if you guys are curious, happy to have a more detailed discussion. Raul, do you want to go through this in a little bit more detail, or you want me to shift to
No, let's. I think it's interesting now that Lana has sort of shared what are some of the key components of these models. How are some of the of looking at data in different ways, of being able to capture different elements of products. It's good to bring this to life for two main reasons. So first of all, it's not going to be the same across all the categories. Before we get to the actual tool demo, and before you see how some of these elements come to life, we wanted to give you a couple of other ways in which AI, in which trying to be smart about the different trends that we currently have and elevate this with technology, help actually get to a much better understanding of innovation. So let's take one key successful example of innovation, which is the iPhone, right? So Lana was talking about different components that we need to keep in mind when you are thinking about a new product. So not all new products will be the same. Not all the new products will have the same elements that we need to consider when we are launching them. So we're talking about the type of innovation. So if we think about an iPhone, the first time that it was launched, it was a completely new thing as part of the ecosystem. So the word smartphone didn't even came fully to life after we saw some of these products being launched, and it really paved the way for new things coming, right? So when we think about innovation, there will be some very strategic ones, such as this example. There will be some extensions. There will be some relaunches. So these are one of the things that we need to have extremely clear when we think about, okay, what is the type of innovation that we are launching and what's the role that it's going to have.
Yeah, Raul, can I just chime in just for one second?
Yeah.
So I just want to make it very clear that iPhone was highly disruptive innovation. Nobody could have predicted success of iPhone, right? However, iPhone new product launches or any smartphone new launches can be predicted because we now have precedent, we now have product attributes, we now know what consumers want there. So when we talk about type of innovation, the disruptive is missing here, but strategic is there, extension and relaunch, all of this can be predicted. Sorry, didn't mean to. I just wanted to clarify.
No. And this is, and thanks, Lana, because this actually reinforces the point of understanding what's the role that it's going to have and what are the levers and what are the tools that you actually have to understand how the product is going to be launched, right? There are some other elements that Lana was also talking about, which are product attributes. So, okay, let's say that you already have the iPhone, but then you decide to launch a new iPhone without a home button, right? So this is something that even within something that was already disruptive, there are new things that are coming, and there are new things that are changing the way people interact with the product. So understanding how products are being used, what are the key things that differentiate the purchasing decision for the key customers, and how some of these trends are influencing those, it's going to be very important. Which leads me to the next point, which is consumer trends, right? So this is something that, going back to this example, we see Apple is even struggling a little bit because now consumer trends are moving towards an AI-enabled ecosystem in a lot of tools and solutions, which it's actually what we are here for as well, that leverage AI as a key component on their needs, right? So this is a key consumer trend that people need to keep in mind. And this is why Apple has invested and currently actually shows some of the struggles that they're currently having. Then there's another element which we touch upon, which is execution parameters. So whenever a new launch is being designed, companies need to understand I need to decide how this is going to coexist with products, or how different variants of these are going to affect the pricing strategy, or how the distribution strategy is going to be specifically planned for a product. So going back to this example, there usually Apple goes with different sizes, different price tiers that are linked to the memory capacity and some other issues that are key components on how execution parameters are thought. And the last thing, it's very important to keep in mind what are some external impacts and external influences that a launch is going to have. In this case, when we come to this example, we think about tariffs as being something that has been very present in the recent months when it comes to smartphones. So these are things that, if you think from a perspective of a smartphone, definitely will be paving the way on how you plan for it and how you are smart about understanding different levels, different signal, and create a good forecast for the product, right? So, I mean, these will obviously, as Lana mentioned, change category to category. And there are two key components when we look at all of these integrated, which actually lead us to what we're going to see next, which is, first of all, we need to be, we want to have as much information possible and relevant information possible to be accurate. And the second point is we want to get insights that would lead to good decisions as well. So if we move to the next page, Lana, please. So trying to paint a very high level picture of how some of these models help bring to life the importance of different elements playing in the way a forecast is created. So here we have two examples. So we have one example on the paint care category. We have one example on the confectionery category. So when models are built and when we try to understand all of these different elements that we just talked about, such as benefits, attributes, execution rules, the type of innovation, and so on, each of them will play a very different role in how we understand the category. So as I was mentioning, one has to do with how we properly understand them so we can have an accurate model, but also these are extremely useful insights for innovation teams, category leads, so they understand where to place their attention and where they actually make a difference when speaking to the consumer. So these are examples that we've seen across some of these categories. So if you see, these are sorted by importance that these elements have on the performance of a category. So we see things related to model to launch execution on paint care, for instance. The pricing strategy, the distribution strategy, the sizing strategy will have an impact. There are things on the attributes, such as the type of product, in this case, the form, whether it's a capsule, whether it's a pill, whether it's a syrup. Also, the benefits are going to be important when we think about pain care. For instance, if it's has migraine relief properties, or the same with ingredients, right? So these are things that are going to be relevant across category. And the way we leverage AI is, first of all, to have a proper understanding of all of these elements playing across the categories. And second, to use the latest and greatest analytics to properly account for their impact in performance. And if we see in confectionery, we will see like different ways which this affects, such as more flavor-related attributes. The benefits are going to be more focused on sugar-free or reduced fat or some other properties that are important, again, within the context of a category trend. Okay, so this basically help us to bring to life how some of these conceptual elements on how we look at different data, how we look at things from different angles actually become very useful for these two purposes that I highlighted on the accuracy and understanding performance.
All right. Should we shift to demo quickly?
Yeah.
So before we go to demo, what we develop is basically all this, all this sequence, if you will, is now in a web-based application. this is obviously a sanitized demo. It doesn't have like completely full functionality, but it should give you an idea of how you interact with this solution.
Yeah. And what we want to do today is we want to bring to life some of the elements that we talked about.
Raul, do you want to take the screen?
Yeah. Is it visible now?
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to bring to life some of the elements that Lana mentioned, because some of these are how the model is created, but second is how do we consume this data? So I'm going to focus on three things. So the first one is how do we define a concept? The second is how do we modify and adjust launch parameters? And the third one is how do we run scenarios so we have different ways and agile ways to make decisions. So the first thing I want to do is that I want to create a new scenario, right? So when I start creating a scenario, I need to place the product within its ecosystem. So where is it going to live? What's the brand, the type of product, the pack type, and different elements that are going to be important to understand where the product lives that help us define the attributes and benefits that matter to consumer. And by now, the AI has helped me not only to parse and structure many different data, a lot of different attributes into something that's going to be useful, but also it can help me now that I created this new concept to place it within the right place that it will fit, right? So I can define market, category, segment, different elements that are going to be important. Same thing with the innovation type, right? So when I create the concept, now the next thing that I need to do is that I need to create and identify different attributes that are going to be relevant for the consumer. So in this case, I'm creating a new face moisturizer. They're going to have different benefits, such as it's going to have SPF, which is something that we understand for this category is going to be important. We need to define the type of product. If it's going to be a serum, it's going to be a cream. And all of these elements, again, it's not only just to have more data to fit into the model, but also help the model identify the different trends that it needs to consider, right? So when I run the model here, after I have defined all the different elements, you see that it's calculating the new sales. And AI, the AI by this point is already helping me not only to bring the latest and greatest in terms of analytics, but it's also elevating how I compare it against some of these closer segments, past launches, and also recent trends, right? Which give me a quick sense of how the product is going to perform. So the next thing that now I can see is how I can look at the launch parameters. So let's click on review now. For this key launch, what I need to set is, okay, what's going to be my assumption on the distribution? So the first thing that the model will do is that it will give me a recommended strategy for distribution. In this case, based on all the different elements that I had identified earlier, this is the distribution recommendation that I get, right? So I get different types of assumptions, which are now applying to the model. So I can adjust this distribution, which leads me to my next point, which is running scenarios. And I can see in real time that if I aim to have a distribution of, by the end of the year, of 20 TDPs, this is how my new assumption on performance is going to look like. So anytime that I play with these assumptions, I can see what's the performance for the new product, considering all the elements that I have already defined. So in this case, how I've used the AI is that it helped me provide different guardrails. So I know if my targets are realistic or not, which prevent me from setting numbers that are going to be maybe too optimistic or too pessimistic, depending on the different elements that I have evaluated for the concept. And the last thing that I want to show is how can I compare different elements also in terms of attribute, not only in execution. So I show you how I can compare the two different assumptions on my distribution, but what if I want to compare things like having no SPF, right? Let's say the company wants to understand whether investing in ingredients that are going to lead to SPF are going to have an additional cost. So I can very easily do this. I can run the model, and what I will see here, I will also look at my distribution assumptions, and what I will be able to see here is compare my two different concepts, one with SPF, one without SPF, and I'll have all the information available to make that decision. So by now, what are the things that I've seen come to life from what we showed? So the first of all is that in just a few steps, I defined the concept. I was able to set up some assumptions that are guided by AI and by analytics, and I was able to explore scenarios as well. So in this case, human experience or human intervention and the AI work together to provide structure, context, and specific data signals that I knew that were important. And the result is that in this way, I was able to eliminate some of the risk that human bias, that not looking at all the data that it's available will lead to. And I can assume that this launch will have the best possible signals available whenever I want to generate an assumption or want to understand how my product is going to perform.
So just to add to this quickly, what is this really good for us? So this comparing concept with different attribute is really good when you relatively early in the process, when you have multiple concepts that you want to quickly kind of estimate size, refining product attributes. This is an excellent tool to do it very quickly on the fly. Once you have that, you can actually, once you land on a concept, you can actually go and refine your execution plans based on, your knowledge. You might be talking to accounts already. You might know that I'm going to replace product XYZ. This is what the the shelf space will go to this product. So you might actually refine execution, but at the same time, you have the guardrails say, okay, what is realistic, what is not realistic?
Okay, so back to you, Lana.
Yeah, okay, good question from Maria Stell. Quite fast on the mass. So Maria Stell, happy to schedule additional call on the mass, but very quickly, these are the base model, actually both for incrementality and for forecast models. These are decision tree models. These are machine learning models, right? So data, if you can actually, I can share my screen and I can go to this page. See. Oh, yeah. Well, let me go to the right page here. So, okay. So for these products, new product forecast models, you have product attributes, and you're going to have, this is just super simplified here, but you actually are going to have for each historic product, you have all the product attributes, they're all mapped, similar for product claims and product benefits. You have mapped type of innovation, you have mapped, or you have your execution, and you're feeding consumer megatrends. So the way the model works is basically building a decision tree on all of these factors. So it's probably like, I don't know, it's probably 50 to 70 factors or something like that go into, I might be lying, but it's like just the estimate, right? But it's a lot of factors that go into this model. And decision tree is running on a combination of these factors. And basically not necessarily getting an actual lead, because it's not the, these are not regression model, they're decision trees, but getting an cumulative impact, right? So that's the math. And then for incrementality, we're using similar decision tree models, but they're really focused on, are you able to get incremental, like historically, are you getting incremental execution, and are you getting incremental execution for this type of claims and attributes within a particular brand? One thing actually we didn't mention here that is very important. Brand is a sub-brand, a very, very important factors in the model. We excluded them here because we're doing it for a particular brand, right? But they're actually critical because brand and resulting sales and share a pretty good proxy for brand equity. We don't put sheer brand equity there because we don't have it for all brands usually, but if it's available, we can add that as a factor as well. Did I answer it a little bit? If you want to text or message, but if not, happy to get on a call with the technical team that will take you into more detail.
And Lana, we have another question from Amit Gupta. This was for new product launch. What about improving forecasting accuracy for existing products?
For existing products, we can improve forecast accuracy as well. It is really, it's a slightly different model. But so a lot of the factors are the same. So all of the execution factors are there. We're adding competitive factors. We're adding macro factors as well. The error rate, of course, is a lot lower in existing products because we have history, right? So here we're aiming for, basically being under 20 as far as accuracy. For existing products, where it depends on, of course, the level of product maturity, on how volatile it is, but we're definitely aiming at much lower error, much higher accuracy.
Just to provide you some context, the entire forecasting suite within Cloverpop goes everything from long range category forecasts all the way down to demand planning forecasts, as well as new product forecasts, right? So within the overall suite, we have that capability as well, and we'll share some more information with you directly.
Yep. Any other questions? Okay. Raul, are we done with the demo, or there was something else you wanted to show?
No, we can go back to the content.
All right. So all of that basically gives us an idea that, we can significantly increase accuracy, particularly for products where you don't necessarily have the budget to do, to do market research, to do type of basis study. So it's really cutting from, your error by about half. You're going to have much more realistic expectations, and will very likely reduce wasted spend on innovation that is not likely to hit, not likely to succeed. Accelerated market impact. Again, this is once you have these models working for the category, it is really a much faster, much more efficient way to work with innovation, to build multiple scenarios, to understand, how you can adjust your execution launch, basically de-risking your innovation and scaling intelligence. We can build these models at scale across markets and across your product categories. Once we build the model for one market, scaling to other markets still takes market-specific data, of course, but because we understand category structure, what is important in the category, it's a lot faster. So it's a highly scalable model. Some of the lessons learned that, what we discovered building this was really that it's hard to estimate the impact of execution on success, because most of product launches that you see in the marketplace are not disruptive, and relatively few are strategic, like highly, kind of venture too far. A lot of products do have precedent and proxy in the marketplace, and when we combine this with trend on product attributes, with consumer attitudes, we're actually able to assess it quite well. The place where a lot of companies stumble is execution, and why they're consistently overestimated. It's not that concepts are always, worse than they thought. It's really they're unable to get the execution, particularly distribution. It's really like always, practically in all models, we see the distribution and ability to gain distribution emerges as #1 driver of a predictor of success. Of course, distribution is highly related to product velocity. You might get distribution, but if product is not performing, is going to get delisted, accounts are going to drop it. So combining those two is very important. And historically, again, the second is thing is that companies really consistently, significantly overestimate success. And it's true because nobody is going to, decide that I'm going to launch a failing product. Nobody wants that, right? But by using this system, you can at least like realistically assess, are you going to succeed? Are you going to be in the ballpark, even close to the hurdle rate? Or it's just going to be me too. So you can potentially spare yourself some churn, some innovation churn. And that actually leads me to another point, is that what we're seeing in a lot of companies, a lot of categories, is innovation churn, where you're constantly like putting new extensions, something new on the product. Year one, they're supported and they're doing well. Year two, something goes wrong, and it's just like company switches attention to new news and switches support, and the product goes down. So in some industries, it's justified. If we're talking about fashion, for example, obviously you're going to, churn products. But we're seeing in many cases some really excessive churn in categories where you might be better served by saving money and in kind of like continuously investing in your product. So fewer and bigger product launches. So these are really the key learnings. Would love to, answer more questions. If you guys have more technical questions, would love to understand if it applies to your category, how we can potentially help with that. Would love to schedule follow-up calls.
Yep. And Lana, if you go to the next page. So we've got about 10 minutes left to facilitate any questions. So feel free to just drop a question in the Q&A box here. In the meantime, following this webinar, you're going to receive a recording of the webinar as well as a copy of the presentation that Lana and Raul just took us through. Additionally, all of our emails are here. Please feel free to reach out to us with any questions. If we want to, Mary Stella, I see, we definitely should have a deeper discussion around the decision tree models. Definitely deserves another call, absolutely. So happy to specifically talk to you about that. We could also do another webinar on more of the technical elements as well. But if there's any questions, please reach out to us. Also, if you want to book a demo, cloverpop.com, or again, feel free to reach out to Lana, Raul, or myself. Lana, let's get a question come in. The question is, so a lot of the focus has been around pre-launch analytics. Anything in terms of post-launch innovation, course correction?
Yeah, absolutely. Same system can actually be adjusted. So post-launch, what happens is, we're seeing a lot of products starting to behave differently at a 3 to 6 months mark. And once the product is launched, we can look at the velocity, we can adjust, and we can basically look at what is happening post-launch. How can you adjust your execution? Are you on track getting your distribution? Are you on track, with your support rates? So one example, let's see, like working with the company, snack company, excellent products, great velocity. They were super behind on execution, particularly on distribution. So we helped them to find, where the accounts, what are the accounts they should go to. But more importantly, it was really about saying, for example, they launched in the wrong aisle. They launched in the, it was, okay, it was a while ago, so I can probably talk about this. It was Blue Diamond, so most of their products were in the nut island. So they launched in that island, but the product that they launched was actually a confectionery. So it shouldn't be in that island. So we help them to understand that. Product launch timing, any kind of like pricing disconnects, we can definitely adjust for all that.
Yeah, and if I may add, one thing that we don't go through in detail, but also having the ability to manage different scenarios can help you at least assess some of the risk before you actually start performing in the market, right? Which makes adjustment and reacting to them easier. You saw that when I was playing a little bit with the distribution assumptions, we had 2 lines, and we can go very specific at the monthly level, in any of the different elements that are included in the model, and say, okay, what happens if by I don't know, by the end of the year, I decide to do something different on my pricing, something different on my distribution to revamp the product or to address some of these issues that Lana was mentioning as well. The answer here is we might not know the exact answer since the beginning, and one of the challenges that Lana was talking about is this uncertainty on execution, but the ability to adapt to it and react and the ability to manage the risk ahead is what it's very important to do as we start gathering some additional learnings as well.
Great. Excellent. Well, thank you all for joining us. Like I mentioned, you'll be getting a copy of the recording, copy of the documents. If you'd like to have a follow-up, dig in deeper again, please reach out to us and we'll be in touch. Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Have a good day.